All right, so here we're in week 6 of BIO100, and in this week's online module, we're going to be talking about writing about scientific results. And this is just the first intro video that you should be watching before you get to any of the other videos. So first, in this intro here, one of the things I like to do at the beginning is to remind you of what some of the overall goals of the course are. And so in general for BIO100, some of the course student learning outcomes that are listed on your syllabus, if you remember from the very beginning, at the end of the semester, you as a student should be able to, first of all, summarize the experimental methods, results, and conclusions of a peer-reviewed manuscript. So we'll focus on that results section today, and we'll talk about the other sections later in different modules. And then the second thing you should be able to do, generally related to this course that is related to what we're talking about this week, is number 2, you should also be able to produce and revise sections of a written scientific paper. And so we're going to break that down for you, and again, today what we're going to be focusing on is this results section here. So how do you produce and revise a results section of a written scientific paper? And so I also like to bring us back here to this overall course concept map so we can have an idea of a roadmap of where we are in the course right now. And so if we look down here, so the whole course is about scientific data, right? And then what we're focusing on is writing about data. So we're looking at, let's do this. We're looking at this offshoot here. And then when you're writing about data, it's important to think about what kind of audience you are writing for. And so today specifically we're going to focus on writing for a scientific audience, again specifically talking about writing the results for a scientific audience, and then later we'll come back to week 9 here where how that might differ from when you're trying to write results for the public or communicate results to the public. So we'll come back to that later, but again this week we're talking about writing results specifically for a scientific audience. And so that brings us to our specific learning outcomes for this module in particular. And so at the end of this module in week 6 here, you should be able to, first of all, explain why scientific writing is important for your future career. And so I'll talk about this a little bit later, but anytime we can connect what we're doing here in class to relevance to our own lives and why it's important, it's been shown to increase learning. So I really want us to be able to think about and articulate why scientific writing is important for your future career in particular. Number 2, we'll also identify what I'm calling the where and the what components of a results section in a scientific paper. So we'll talk about what that means and how you can find them in a scientific paper that you're reading. Number 3, we're also going to not only identify these parts in the scientific paper, but also write our own results narratives that include these where and what components for a given data set. So we'll start talking about that in the online module. You'll do that for homework and then bring that with you to the in-class portion, and we'll do some discussion and peer review there. Number 4, like I just said, you should also be able to revise your scientific writing based on peer feedback. So that's something that we're going to focus on in one of the in-class portions once we complete the online module. And then to put it all together, lastly, you should be able to compose an effective scientific results section that includes not only this written results narrative, but also a figure and a figure legend. And so this is going to build on previous things we've done in BIO100 in previous weeks when you did figure generation and you did scientific analysis, so different statistical tests to analyze your data. And here we're going to try to put all of these different components together. And this, again, is something that we're going to focus on in class this week. Okay, but before we get into really the meat of this module, again, one thing I really like to do in my modules is to have you activate your prior knowledge. So what that means is helping you give context for new information, and it also builds these connections to help you store this material in your long-term memory. So I said we really want to store these things in our long-term memory. And so if we look at this graph here, on the y-axis we have depth of memory, and then on the x-axis we have the time. So basically over here we have someone remembering and retaining that memory for years, whereas here on the far left they're only remembering that item for seconds. And really in the courses that you're taking here at Sac State and in BIO100 or any biology class, really the goal is for you to have this long-term memory where you're not just cramming things and then forgetting them, but you're really remembering them for a long time. And so activating your prior knowledge is one of the ways that has been proven to help items in your brain move from this short-term to this long-term memory. So our goal is for you to learn this information, remember it for a really long time, and activating your prior knowledge and giving you context for that new information is going to help you build those connections so you can remember that information easier in the long term. So now what we would like you to do is go to the Canvas online module for week 6 and complete the prior knowledge quiz. And then once you do that, you can move on to the next parts of the module, and then we'll have a second video where you can watch that'll really get us into the meat of writing about scientific results. So go ahead and go do that quiz, and then I will see you again soon in a bit.